Ever wish you had someone to talk to anytime, anywhere, no matter what you're going through? Meet PsychPal, your 24/7 AI companion designed to help you process your thoughts, calm your mind, and keep you moving forward. Chat anytime during a panic attack, on a restless night, or just when you need to vent. Prefer talking instead of typing? Try voice journaling. PsychPal listens, transcribes, and truly understands. You can even upload screenshots of tough conversations, and it'll help you unpack how they made you feel. PsychPal keeps life organized too. It can add appointments to your calendar, track your mood, and even summarize your sessions for your therapist so you'll never lose progress. Plus, built in crisis resources are always just one click away. It's a privacy first, constantly evolving, made to complement your professional care, not replace it. Ready to try it out? Head over to the link in this episode and use my code Pete at checkout to get 20% off your first month subscription to PsychPal. PsychPal, because your mind deserves a companion too.
That's how you want last time. I don't want to be normal, they know I will not die. You can try it no more, just so you can heal my time. All the times that I'm sober, still got my pedal through the metal. Told you I'll be a local, that's how you want last time. I don't want to be normal, so you can stay inside. That's why they say that you're local, you see this world is mine. I'm not even your hope for them time and taking more down loaded. I will show them one more, so that's how you want last time. I don't know what's so hard, can you get it through your mind?
Welcome to another exciting episode of Pete for Society. My guest today is a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst with more than 50 years of experience as a clinician, educator, and the author of Listening for a Lifetime, The Artful Science of Psychotherapy. Please welcome in David I. Joseph. David, welcome in, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So, David, 50 years, man, that's a lot. That's an accomplishment, man. That's a lifetime for a lot of people, man. So, what are some things people may not know about you?
Well, they may not know much other than what you just told them. I'm a physician. I went to college thinking I was going to be a psychoanalyst, and I was an English major, and I thought I would be a writer for a while of critical fiction, of literary criticism, but I decided I didn't enjoy that. So I did go to medical school, and then I became a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst, and I've spent over 50 years as an educator. I was the director of a residency program in Washington, D.C., where I've lived since 1971. And then I had psychoanalytic training, and I was active in our Psychoanalytic Institute. And I've taught at George Washington University for a long time, where I'm a clinical professor. And I recently closed my practice about 3 years ago. I'm going to be 85. And so I stopped while I was at the top of my game.
That's awesome, man. So, let me ask you this one. So what is psychoanalyst? For people that may not know what that means, maybe break that down for them. Let them know exactly what it is, kind of work you do in that area.
Well, it's a great question, because when you say psychoanalysis, people have some notion of a guy with a beard sitting behind a couch and somebody just going on and on and on and on. And that's a caricature of what psychoanalysis is. At least as I think about psychoanalysis, it's a way of thinking about human experience, all experience, our thoughts, our ideas, our dreams, our fantasies, our working, our relationships with our kids, with our spouses. And it's a way of understanding and looking at the complexities of our psychology. And it's based on a number of premises. It doesn't deny the importance of the brain. It doesn't deny neurophysiology and genetics, but it says that one's experience growing up and one's experiences in life with its pains and sometimes its trauma, it shapes who we become, what we protect ourselves from, ways in which we feel vulnerable, and how we protect against that.
That's really cool, though. I mean, that's a really interesting area to be in. What drove you to go to that area, though? I mean, that's such a fascinating area to be in general, though.
Well, it is, and it's a good question. I think in many ways, although I wasn't aware of it when I was, let's say, in high school, that's when I wrote down on my application to college that I wanted to be a psychoanalyst. In some ways, I think without knowing it, I knew I was wrestling with some things, and I was much more anxious and tentative and unhappy than I was really aware of. And I needed someone to help me clear that stuff away so I could be free to become the person I wanted to become. And my dad who was a businessman, had his own analysis. And I think from my point of view, I am not making a sharp differentiation between psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. I don't in my book, and I won't in our conversation. So my dad had his own analysis, which had been actually life-saving for him. He had a bad skin disease that didn't respond to anything except psychotherapy, and it cured him. So I think I knew that. I knew I had my own issues that were troubling me. And without, as I say, without it being conscious, it steered me to become a psychoanalyst, which has been a very enriching profession from so many different perspectives.
Oh yeah, definitely, because you're in such an interesting and unique area of, to be in and things like that too. The things that you're learning and the things, like you said, your dad had a situation where only that could help, and that's interesting too for a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, oh, you automatically think it's like snake oil, but really it's not. Like it's proof right there. If it worked for your dad, so how are you going to say it didn't work? You know what I mean? A lot of people are very skeptic when it comes to those kind of things.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. And look, skepticism is a very useful thing to have. There's an awful lot of snake oil that's being pushed around, and I think it's not just to say that psychotherapy works. It's a very personal relationship between a psychotherapist and the person who's coming for help. And
Yeah.
you've got to have a good fit. I mean, this is not like saying surgery works if you need a heart valve replacement. You've got to find the right psychotherapist for you. And that's as personal as any other relationship. A friendship.
No, I think it's a really great point, though, David. Really quick, I think it's a really good point that you mentioned that you got to find the right one that fits. Because I feel like a lot of people feel like it's a one and done type thing. Oh, well, I'm going to meet some, and I don't like this person instantly. Yeah, but you got to find that person that matches what you're looking for. And I think that a lot of people don't want to put that work in, though. They just want to come up with the reason why it doesn't work, so they can just dismiss it instantly.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. Because look, it takes a lot of courage to be in psychotherapy. You've got to be willing to let somebody earn your trust, and then to share with that person things that are important to you, but where you feel vulnerable. And it's got to be the right fit between two people. And so it's not that I don't think about someone being in therapy. I think about, well, they're in therapy with whom?
Yeah.
With you, with me, with Dr. Freud, and they'll have a very different experience depending upon who their therapist is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100% with you on that one. Because when I was doing therapy too, it took me a few to find one. Like one, it was like at first it was okay, but then it doesn't fit, and a lot of people are like, I think they're so afraid to say, oh, this isn't working, but it's like they don't realize that a lot of them are already trained to know that. It's like, they know if you don't fit and you guys aren't getting somewhere. It's okay to change and go find somebody that fits better what your needs are. It's not you're not in a relationship per se, but you know what I mean? Like you're not in one of those relationships where their feelings are going to get hurt if you decide to switch and decide this is just not working for me, kind of thing. You got to be honest. That's right.
And if their feelings are hurt, that's their problem. Although many people enter therapy because they're afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings. They're afraid that they're too aggressive or too assertive. But that's the therapist's problem. If it's not working, it doesn't mean that psychotherapy won't be helpful. It means that this person isn't the person for you.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. That's what I tell a lot of people too. I'm like, talk therapy. When you go to it, you got to understand that sometimes this is not a fit. There's people I know that have gone through like 7 different therapists, and they finally found somebody that fit what their need was. And sometimes that's the process you go through. Like, it's like trying on new shoes. Like you're gonna try on a different pair. Oh, okay, I don't like those. All right, go to the next one. You're not hurting that shoe's feeling by changing to something else. You know what I'm saying? It's like.
Absolutely.
It's funny. And it's funny too when I hear people say like I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't go talk about your feelings. I don't know what to tell you. Like don't go and waste your money if you're not going to at least put the effort in and talk to somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to start off.
And they should ask themselves when someone says, I don't want to talk about my feelings. The question is, well, why not? Are you feeling vulnerable? Are you feeling ashamed? Are you feeling guilty? Are you worried that the person won't respect you?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time for a trusting relationship to develop. Somebody who comes to see me and right off the bat starts telling me the most personal information, I have to wonder, why are they doing that? Because they don't even know who I am. They know my credentials, but that doesn't tell you much.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great point, David, that you said, is that someone just comes in and starts dumping off everything, and you're like, wait, hold up. wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. Like, why are you automatically telling me these things? I think we need to establish trust first before we get there. And I love that though, that you're honest about that, because I think that that's the first step, is that you got to build that relationship with people. Because I know with my therapist and I was what it's like. We were just talking about, we're just having a casual conversation at first, trying to get to know each other. I could ask her questions, she could ask me questions, things like that, and we just got to kind of know each other. And it's almost like dating a little bit in ways, because you're learning to know each other. Then you get into the deep seated issues, the things that you're talking about, depending on what it is that it is. You may never know you have some problems. Like, there's a guest we met that she started doing hypnotherapy, said that she didn't even know that at 3 years old she had an incident happen until she went to hypnotherapy, because, as we know, the body remembers things, but the brain had shut off that memory, so she wouldn't remember what it was. But when she was doing hypnotherapy, the hypnotherapist kept telling her, hey, listen, there's something else we need to talk about, but we won't talk about it right now. Just kept like alluding to something, but waited though, which I was like, okay, I can respect that. He didn't just jump into it, go like, hey, listen, let's just drop everything off right now. He's like, okay, well, when you're ready, we'll go into that area of what this thing is we need to talk about. And then she found out what the incident was. I thought it was an interesting approach, but at the same time, I respected it, because he didn't just come in and go, okay, well, we're just going to drop all your interviews for thoughts on you. We'll work to that thought process, to that little area of thing that we need to talk about, which I thought was so fascinating, because she's like, well, I didn't even know. I had no idea. But from my interviews of things I've learned as I've met different people, such as yourself, that the brain shuts off these memories, but the body remembers it. Because like
Absolutely.
I have an abandonment issue when I was younger. So like every time I'd go back to the moment, I'd remember the feeling, but I didn't remember the exact moment. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't replaying the moment. I'm replaying the feelings of that moment though, and things like that too. And there was a gentleman we met. He's been doing psychology for like 35 years. Dr. Tim Blake. Him and I were talking, and he didn't even know I was even abandoned, but he'd asked me after a few questions of things I said to him. He goes, hey, let me ask you a question. I go, yeah. He goes, were you abandoned when you were younger? He goes, I'm like, how do you know? He goes, like, well, based on the way you were saying things. So like after doing like 300 of these interviews, I started doing the same thing. Like I listen to what people say, David. I'm listening to what they're saying. And a lot of times I can identify some things that they've been through, and it's just something I've learned over all these interviews, that I'm just listening to different people tell these stories, the dialogue they use, the wordage, the verbiage they start using, the things they start saying and alluding to. It's like, I usually stop most people in conversations that meet me. I go, okay, listen, I already know I already know what we don't have to go any further in this conversation. We can save this for another time, for a private session, kind of private conversation, because a lot of people meet, want to talk to me about things, and they tell me stuff. And I'm just like, I could tell based on a lot of times what they're saying, where this conversation is leading most times, which is pretty interesting, because that's what Dr. Tim Blake did to me. I was like, okay, now I see what he's talking about. Because after you learn a lot of these, different things that people are talking about, how they start talking about different phrases they'll use that alluding to these certain situations, I've started learning how to pick up on those kind of things as I go. And it's been kind of fun, because in conversations, like a lot of times I already know what people are talking about. And they're very shocked that I already know what area we're heading to for what area of what it was, just because I've just kind of listened to everything that goes on.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you've learned to do over the years is you've learned how to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wrote the book and titled it the way I did because it is the way in which we listen that has a huge impact on people.
Mm-hmm.
And listening as a therapist is a different kind of listening from listening as a husband or a father or a friend. Therapeutic
Yeah,
listening
definitely.
is its own listening. And if you learn to listen that way, you can hear all kinds of things that aren't apparent right off the bat.
Yeah. So let's get into the book, Listening for a Lifetime, The Artful Science of Psychotherapy. So take us through, what was that moment you realized that you're going to write this book? Is this like a collective of all your 50 years of experience, and just kind of teaching people that if you do listen, just like you just said, you can learn a lot of things? Or what?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And the answer to the question will surprise you, because when I realized that it surprised me, I wasn't thinking about writing a book, but I teach a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And two of my students and one of my fellow faculty members said to me, you have a way of saying things in very succinct ways and with succinct phrases that are very useful, and you ought to write a book. And when the third person, who was a faculty member and someone I taught writing with, she said, you ought to write a book. Then I said, okay. And then I was sort of off to the races. And I collected about I actually got 100 of them, although I didn't put them all in the book. The book has only got about 50 of aphorisms. I call them aphorisms, short, pithy statements that have a lot of meaning. And I found that the book was just waiting to be written, and it just flowed out of me. And I learned a great deal about both what I think and about myself in the process of writing it. And I also wanted to write something that anybody who was interested in the experience could benefit from, whether it's my most senior colleagues or whether it's someone who's just curious. And if people can't understand something in my book, then I've failed.
I love that though. I love that approach that you have so much knowledge, but the way you break it down, it's easy digestible for people that just anybody can pick it up and read. Though I love the concept of that, because I think a lot of those times people see the big words and get worried. But if you're making it more friendly to them, like, hey, listen, let me explain this to you. I'm going to give you a big word first, but I'm going to break it down for you so it's understandable, so it doesn't seem so scary afterwards. And I love that approach though.
You won't find very many big words in my book.
Okay.
There's not. There's some, but not
Yeah.
very many, because big words tend to depersonalize the experience.
Yeah.
And I wanted people, and I say somewhere in the book, when you finish the book, I'd like you to think you had a dialogue with me.
That's so cool though.
It's so big words are sort of push people away. And
Hmm.
at least for me, good writing invites the reader in.
Yeah. No, you're right. Good. Think about it. Any successful book, how it is they draw people in is it's good writing. It's like, you want to draw them in to continue to want to read the book. You don't want to scare them and send them away not to read the book, and how the dialogue you use and everything else, all these different aspects that come in when you're writing the book though, but you said it was pretty easy to do though. I mean, and you think about it, you're thinking about like where you were to where you're now. You're like, oh, listen, I'm going to have a book written. I'm going to have 50 years experience. Like thinking about like where you're going to end up. You're like, yeah, I don't know. Could you see that as your younger self? Like, hey, I've had 50 years experience. Think about it. If you went and met your younger self and told, hey, listen, in X amount of years, you're going to have 50 years experience. You're going to have a book written. You're probably be laughing at yourself going, okay, yeah, that's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Although when I said the book was just waiting to be written, it was. But writing is a real craft, and, you refashion it and you think about it and you say, that's not as clear as I want it to be. And it's a process. It's its own kind of creation, and and you're constantly growing. At least for me, I grow when I write. I learn a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like as I do this podcast and the different interviews I do, I learn new things for everybody. I read different books that people have written, stuff like that. There's all new things I applied in my life now. Like my current partner now, she has BPD, so I apply a lot of the things I learn about people that have BPD and like how to approach things to everyday life. And it's interesting to see how people react though. Think about it. Because with people with BPD, you have to be careful of your tone of voice. You have to be careful the way you explain things to them, because sometimes they don't totally understand what you're saying. So like when I'm messaging her or send her a message or something, I have to think about how I'm saying it, because I want to make sure she understands it. And now I apply it to my life now. Like before I respond to people, I'm thinking about the answer before I do. Before I used to just shoot off at the hip. Now I'm different how I do it. And people mention that now, go like, well, I've known Pete for a year now, and he's way different now. I don't know what's different, but there's something different about me. It's like, because now I'm looking at things from a different aspect. I'm a year older, but I have more knowledge because of the people I've met along the way in these interviews. The different things I'm learning, I go explore different avenues of things. I read different books. I check out different things people are telling me about, and all these other fascinating things. I'm constantly curious. And that was the one thing a lot of people liked about me, was that I'm very curious about their subjects. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm always interested in those things. Why not? Like, if I can explore a different avenue, why not? And I go tell people about it. It's even better, because the word of mouth right there is like, they're teaching me something, I'm learning something, and then I'm taking that and I'm going to teach other people that I'm doing everything they want me to do. I'm teaching them all about it. Hey, listen, have you checked out this really cool book that someone wrote? And I'll start suggesting books to other people, that read books like that. Like, hey, listen, you want to check out a really great book? There's these really interesting things I've read and these things I've learned. This is where I learned about, and stuff like that too. So I agree. Like, learning new things all the time is great for me. Like, I feel like every conversation I go into, I try to learn something out of the conversation with anybody that I get in with.
Well, yeah. And I mean, and what psychotherapy is about is it's not just about changing behavior, although it may be that if you've got a fear of heights and you
Yeah.
work on the 15th story of a building.
Right.
It's about changing your behavior. But psychotherapy is also learning about yourself, learning things about yourself that are influencing how you feel about yourself and your relationships and your job. And one discovers things about oneself, good things that people hide from themselves, troubling things they feel guilty about, or the woman you mentioned who had some traumatic event in her childhood that she'd forgotten. She remembers it, and then she can process it in a different way so that it doesn't distort how she lives her life as much. It'll always have an impact. You can't
Yeah.
erase what's on the brain.
No,
but
I agree.
you can change how you deal with it and how it affects your life.
Yeah. No, especially with her condition. Yeah. Like I said, I went through an extensive study. I've talked to a couple. One lady is an expert in the field, Jen Bellinger. She was actually a guest on the show. She was one of the top 5 guests, actually. She was on the show, and her and I stay in constant communication all the time. I mentioned that I had started seeing somebody that had the same condition, and she has a great little sub community that I'm a part of that, teaches you different things of like how to, be more supportive for your partner if they have that condition. And it's really cool because I'm learning new things all the time about it. And she always sends me these videos on TikTok and things like that of different videos, really fun, interesting facts that you may not know about people that have BPD. And, I'm always constantly learning new things. And when I met her originally, she had explained a lot of stuff to me too, which is really cool as well. And she was very impressed the fact that the extent I went to because I started doing a lot of research about it. I reached out to Dr. Chen, asked her for some advice, and then she mentioned she had the community and things like that too. And it's been fun. Like I said, man, I've been loving learning new things because I love learning new different things about different stuff. Because I didn't know any of these things before I started this podcast. Now I've learned a wealth of knowledge just sitting here talking to other people and then going exploring different avenues and things like that too. And it's been great.
Yeah, I'm sure we would have had a very different conversation if we'd talked a couple of years ago.
Right, exactly. No, I agree 100% because my knowledge wouldn't be the where it's at now. My thought process wouldn't have been the same thing it is now, and things like that too. So I mean, that's it's just awesome. Like I said, I just love doing this. It's great because every time I hit record, it's like you get to meet new people and different things everybody's doing. And when you have 50 years, that's crazy. So most people, they don't even they don't have 50 years experience, a lot of stuff, the things you've accomplished over the 50 years, and things like that. You have a book now and everything else like that. So how is the book doing though? Are you getting a lot of good reception from it?
Yes, I've gotten a lot of good reception from my senior colleagues who have found that
Okay.
I've challenged them, but I've also had really good response from people who are just curious about being a therapist or being in therapy. And it's been very gratifying because I didn't simplify the book, but I did make it understandable. And
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I've learned from people who have read the book is that I did what I wanted to do in terms of making it really accessible,
Yeah.
including just people for whom English is a second language. And yet this is not a simplified first grade book.
Yeah, no, I think that's the approach that people like, though. From what you're saying, a lot of those people that are responding like the fact that you make it digestible for people to understand. It's just they can understand it any levels. They can pick it up. People are curious. People are, of any curiosity level, they could come and read this and be like, okay, well, this makes sense. And it cancels some of that fear for a lot of people. Because a lot of people are scared to do therapy because they just like we discussed.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason I like the aphorisms is it condenses an issue with lots of ramifications into something quite clear. For example, somebody's behavior seems irrational because we don't understand their rationale.
Yeah.
That's one of the aphorisms in the book, which it says a lot. There's a lot packed into those few words, but it makes my profession understandable and accessible to anybody.
Yeah, and it explains a lot of things too, because I think a lot of times we're quick to judge people. Like we see that irrationalness, but we don't think about what's causing the irrational behavior. Maybe we're not seeing things from their point of view, for these people, these different situations. To us, it's irrational. To them, it's normal. And I think
Yes.
that's our first problem is a lot of us jump to conclusions versus trying to understand what some of these individuals deal with. So we label these either crazy or we say, oh, go to the, like all these people say these nasty comments. We can run and listen, but you know what I'm saying? Like we don't ask questions of these individuals like, hey, listen, what's going on right now? You know what I mean? In most crisis situations, a funny story though, I was on a panel of all these people, and mind you, I have no training, okay? Everybody else has some kind of degree in some field. And they all said this. None of them even said the one thing I said. I said, so why don't we just ask the person how we can help them? And they all look at me and go, oh, well, this guy had a great point. I'm like, what do you mean? Without even putting any logic thought in it, we're just like, why not ask them how we can better help them? Because I think a lot of times in crisis situations, people are quick to think of what's the most complex way to fix it. But instead of going, hey, listen, how can I better help you? Because a lot of times that individual has the answer. Like, hey, listen, what can I do for you? And sometimes you just can't do something for them. Sometimes you just got to let it go through. Like for me, if I start having a freak out session for whatever reason, I'm like, just let me go, man. Let me just get it out. I'll feel better once I get it out. Let me just vent it out. I'm good to go. You know, and I do that sometimes. Sometimes like I'll get like to that point where my anxiety just gets so bad, I'll just send a friend of mine a random message of just, I call it unloading my brain. I just like send this like 5-minute long strip of just nonsense. And I go, okay, I'm good now. Thanks. She just
Well,
starts laughing.
we all need to be listened to. That's true from the time we're born. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, it's pretty self-evident. But look, a young child needs a mother to listen to them, to understand what they need, to respond. And we need to talk with and be listened to by other human beings throughout our lives. We need them in different ways at different times in our life, but we need it so that being able to have a relationship in which I or you really feels listened to, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a professional relationship or a marriage or with your kids, that's something we all need to continue to grow and be productive.
You know, David, a funny story though, the third guest of this season I talked to, that was the topic of our conversation was listen. We kept repeating it. We kept going, listen, you know what the moral of the story is? Listen. That's what we kept saying through the whole thing. We kept making this inside joke about it because she was like, you know, people just don't know how to listen at times. It's like when I call you, I have an issue or I want you to listen to what I'm saying. For whatever reason, the art of listening, people just don't know how to listen these days. Everybody's quick to try and save the day instead of just listening to what it is I need to tell you. Like, hey, listen, I got to tell you something. I need you to listen. There's that key part you have to always emphasize to people. Hey, I just need you to listen right now. You know, not react, just listen to what I'm saying. And I think that we've lost that nowadays. Everybody's quick to try and have the quick fix. You know, everyone has that 5-minute fix and everything. Well, hey, listen, I can fix your problems in 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's also very technologically driven too. I mean, with text messaging and
yeah, God.
phones and computer, it's so much communication goes on without listening. And you, at least I like to write, but I could send you the most meaningful text and it's not the same thing as the two of us having a conversation and listening to each other's voice and not just one's words. So it's a real challenge in today's technological world.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the fact that we're getting so much information at once and we can only process so much at once, you know, and all the misleading conversations about things and some of these people saying some things are just like, oh God, please you stop talking. There's a gentleman I met that was talking about being depressed and he's like, just go back to your 18-year-old self. You'll be fine. I'm like, but what if I hated myself when I was 18? I'm like, what? What kind of advice are you giving people when you're telling them, oh, just go back to your 18-year-old self? I'm like, but what if I hated myself at 18? This is bad advice, man. Please. I'm thinking, please stop giving out advice.
Well, you better not give advice unless you know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Like, just stop.
Right. Sure. And that's a great example, right? You can't give advice until you really understand the person and what kind of advice what you're giving advice about.
Yeah. It's scary, David. It really is. He started saying that, and I'm like, oh God, please stop talking. He's not going to say what I think he's going to say. And he goes, well, go back to your 18-year-old self. You know, you won't be depressed anymore. I'm like, oh God, please stop. Please stop saying things like, quit, man. Like, it's scary. Like, you know, and another one, it's these videos where, I don't know if you've ever seen them yet. These videos where the people are like, after you take your life, you know, you'll get X amount of text messages. To me, I'm thinking like, oh God, please stop recording this video right now. Because the message you're sending to some of these individuals is like, you're telling them that, okay, well, if you end up committing suicide, you know, your life goes on without you. It's like, I don't think you're positive, but your message is having the effect you want it to have. Like, you're telling these individuals they're in this state of mind that basically the world's going to go on without them. So, you know, that's not telling them to stop. You know, I understand what you're attempting to do, but I think the message you're sending isn't too great. And then, you know, we know that when you get to a certain extent, they're not even listening anymore. So like, if you're right before that part where you're stopped listening, it's like, you're going to give them like maybe something in those lists right there is maybe triggering to them. And I just like, every time I see those videos, I'm like, I cringe because I'm like, this is just terrible. I'm like, please stop putting these out there. I understand you all think these are helpful, but they're really not. You're not sending the right message. If somebody's been in that mind state a few times, like you're not telling me anything I want to hear. You're telling me things that are giving me reasons why, okay, if I do this, it won't matter anyways. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, you've got to be very careful giving advice.
Hmm.
And I think what people don't realize about individuals who are suicidal is that if they really think that they're going to try that they're going to kill themselves, it's because it's for them the best solution. And what our job as professionals or friends is to help them realize that they may not they can't envision another solution, but there is another other solution that's better. And so to recommend that someone actually take his or her own life is, in my mind, unethical
Yeah,
unless
no, I agree.
someone has an incurable illness and they're in terrible pain. That's a different choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that being a different option road down there. But these are just, videos that people are putting out there that are just stating these things. And I'm like, and it just makes you cringe every time you see them, and I'm just like, every time I see those videos, it's just like, I just shake my head. I'm like, oh God, please stop. These are not
Yeah.
helpful.
Oh, they're
'Cause-
hurtful. They're
yeah,
hurtful,
hmm
right? At least I believe that everything, and this is something that sort of runs throughout my book, is every intervention we make is either helpful or hurtful. There's nothing neutral,
yeah,
right? Particularly in a professional relationship, but even in a friendship, there's nothing neutral. Either you engage the person in a fulfilling, meaningful way, or the person feels you're not really interested, and it's painful.
yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a very good point, though. Because a lot of times when you try to talk to somebody about that subject too, it's a tough conversation. Even grief, like think about grief as a one too. It was an interesting one that I ran into with a lot of people. That people got upset because somebody just wasn't ready to have that conversation. Well, like I understand, but you have to also understand from the other perspective that some people are just not equipped to handle the conversation of grief because a lot of people feel like they don't know what to say in those situations. A lot of times you can't really say much. Like you could say 10,000 other things, it's just not going to change the situation. And unfortunately, this individual is no longer here. And if you say something wrong, you're going to upset somebody. And I think that's a lot of people's biggest fear is like they don't want to upset you further. But at the same time, a lot of times saying nothing is even worse though, because then they feel like you're not listening to them. Because it's like a double-edged sword almost. You're stuck in between these a rock and a hard place, as a lot of people like to say, you know what I mean? Because if you do say something, it could go good or bad. If you don't say nothing, it'll go good or bad. It's always hard when it comes to those subjects, and stuff like that too.
No, it's very difficult. I mean, it takes courage to be a patient in therapy because
Hmm.
you make yourself vulnerable, but it takes courage to listen because you don't know what it's going to stir up in you. And if someone's really hurting and you want to respond helpfully and you're listening, it's sometimes not easy to know how you can respond that will be helpful.
Yeah.
And some people avoid listening because it makes them too uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely for the subjects of grief, especially. I know that there was something that happened recently where somebody got upset because the other person wasn't listening. I said, but I think you need to understand the individual you're going to. Maybe they're not ready for that conversation. You can't be mad at them because they're not ready to listen to it. They avoided the conversation because they knew they weren't ready for it. And then somebody else got mad. And it's like, I think people just need to be a little more understanding that some people are just not ready for that conversation. Those people, by avoiding that conversation, maybe that's what they're trying to do is like, hey, listen, I'm not ready for this. I can't handle the conversation. It'll stir something up. They don't want to offend you, but at the same time, they're removing themselves from the situation because they don't want to be a part of something that they know they're not ready to handle. And I,
Well, but it would be less hurtful if they would say to the person who's
well,
speaking
yeah,
to them, right? This is really stirring too much in me and I don't want to be hurtful to you. So I think I'm not going to I shouldn't be talking to you because it's getting me too distraught, too upset myself and I want to respond in a way that you need. And I'm not that person right now. That'll be painful for the person who's hurting. At least it'll be honest and caring.
yeah, and I think a lot of people try to take too much account for people's feelings instead of just being honest with them about it. Like you just said, just tell them, hey, I'm not ready to quit. I'd rather not be the person you talk to about this because it stirs feelings up in me. And then they're worried about the response of the other person getting upset. And it's just like, it's a real sticky situation when it comes to those kind of things because at the end, somebody's going to get feelings are going to be exchanged, but at the same time, at least you were honest with them about it. And we're just like, hey, I'm not ready for this conversation. I'm sorry. as much as it's about the painful. This answer may not be what you want to hear. You know, those kind of things like that.
Yeah, right. Then the other person feels you really are invested in them,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying, I'm not the person to talk to about this, but you might know somebody who is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true as a therapist. If somebody comes to see me, and this is an example that's in the book, if I had had a child that was critically ill and in the hospital, and I thought they might die, and a patient came to see me and they had a child who was critically ill, I would say to them, I'm not the person you should talk to right now because I've got stuff going on in my life. I can't be present in the way you need me to be. So let me refer you to my friend Peter,
Mm-hmm.
whose work I respect, because he can be there in the way you need him to be.
You know, yeah, that's the advantages of the show too, David, is that I've had to do that before. It's like, hey, listen, I can't help you in this subject, but I do know somebody. And I've done that before. I've referred them. I reached out to somebody like, hey, listen, I've got a situation. Can you handle this situation, or do you know somebody better equipped? And that we did that before. Hey, I got the number for somebody for you. Here you go. And that's the advantages of having the show and the list of guests I have. You know, it's like I can go back and ask them that like that, like, hey, listen, I got a situation. Do you think you can help? And I'll do exactly like you do. If somebody comes to something I can't handle, I'll reach out to my contact list of people that have been on the show and ask one of them, hey, listen, I know this is an area you work in. Do you know somebody that may be able to better equipped to this? Because I can't help them with this situation. You know, and I'll look for the information to try and help people because that's just the person I am. It's like if I can't help you, because a lot of people do that though. They go, hey, go talk to Peter, and then they come talk to me, and I'm like, yeah, this is not my area, you know. Like I've had to tell a few people that, like, hey, listen, I'm not equipped for this, but let me find you somebody that is, you know. And I go down the Rolodex of people I've got, like, hey, listen, I've got somebody for you. Let me reach out to them, see what they're up to, and see how the best way to contact them are, you know. And I'll do that too. I'll refer people other places because a lot of people send people to me because I run a mental health podcast. So they're like, oh, go talk to Peter. He's better equipped. Wait a minute. Peter's not totally equipped for these kind of things. Peter may know somebody. Come talk to me. Let me know the situation. If I can't help you, I'll be like, hey, listen, I'll be honest with you. These are probably somebody else. Go reach out to this person. They can probably help you better than I can. Because I've done that on several occasions where I've reached out to several guests and asked them that, hey, listen, this is a person more fitted for your area. This is who you need to reach out to and things like that too. So that's the advantages of this. You know, like if I can't help somebody, I may know somebody that can.
Yeah. Well, look, something comes up and you think I'd be the person who would know a
For sure.
resource, I would hope you'd call me. I've retired my practice, but I haven't retired my mind.
Exactly. Listen, that's David. Trust me, you're on that list now. Now that you're sitting here talking to me, you've become part of the contact list, man. I'll be reaching out to David. Hey, listen, man, I got a situation. I need some help with this. So, David, we're at the part of my interviews where I ask an interesting questions to people. Okay, so I have two questions I ask everybody. The first one's kind of a fun one. So, my question to you is that if your mental health had a song, what would you say that song would be? This one's a really fun one too, by the way, because a lot of the interesting answers come out of this one.
It's really funny that I'm smiling, which your listeners can't hear. So it makes me think. I mean, as I told you at the beginning, I'm 85, and
Mm-hmm.
I've told my wife what music I want played at my funeral.
Oh, okay.
A range of different songs. And in terms of the question you asked about what kind of music or what kind of song about feeling good, there's a woman, she's died, named Barbara Cook, and
Mm-hmm.
she sang marvelous American songs, and one of them is by Irving Berlin. It's called "Sing a Song with Me," and it's about being joyous, and it's one of the songs, along with some sad, mournful songs, that I would like played at my funeral. So, and I think that song came to mind now because it has that degree of joy, and yet it doesn't deny the unhappiness that each of us lives with. That's what makes joy so meaningful, is when it doesn't come at the price of denying the ways in which there's a lot of pain in our lives. So if anybody who wants to hear a great singer, Barbara Cook is one of my favorites.
I love it. Yeah, I like that though. That's an interesting one too. Like I said, it's always a fun question because the answers you get from people, because they're always like, damn, that's a great question. And then
Great
they have to
question.
think about it for a minute and then they're like, okay, well, here you go. And then it's always something always interesting. David, before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. The reason I started this whole podcast is that if you could break the stigma about mental health. Now, when I ask you this question, It could be anything that you hear people say on a regular basis that you just want people to stop believing. What would you say that one thing would be?
I want to make sure I understand the question.
The question is that what stigma about mental health would you like to break? Do you think anything that you hear on a daily basis or something you've heard people constantly say that you just want people to stop believing? In your 50 years, there's something out there you've had to be hearing that you can't stand people say. What would you say that one thing would be?
I would say that shame is a cruel prison. Shame is a prison each of us has to wrestle with, and that if we're not careful, we can imprison ourselves out of shame, and that will keep us from coming to share with others, someone else, and asking someone else to listen, to really be present, and to listen even if we have things to talk about that we should be ashamed of. They're not going to judge us as horrible people, that they're going to really try to understand what we're wrestling with. And so the stigma of mental health about going to get treatment is that people feel they're going to be judged because of ways in which they have acted or things they've done or not done that they feel ashamed about or guilty about. And so don't let yourself be imprisoned by shame or guilt. Find someone, let them earn your trust, and then let them come to know you so that you don't have to be tortured by these terribly painful feelings and the thoughts that trigger them.
Definitely. David, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today, man. I had a great time. I appreciate you being here. Before I close out this episode, do you want to let everybody know what's the best way to reach you, where they can find your book?
They can find my book in any bookstore. If you ask them, it's published by Mission Point Press. It's called Listening for a Lifetime, The Artful Science of Psychotherapy. So any bookstore can order it. You can also get it from Amazon, and Amazon has the ebook. I've priced it in a way that's not a lot of money because I'd like people who are interested to be able to read it. And I would love to hear from them, and if they do.
Definitely. Well, David, thank you so much again for coming to hang out with me today. Before we close out, do you have any inspirational words you'd like to say to anybody before we leave?
Yes, that you can grow throughout your life, and that problems that seem insoluble to you now, if you can find the right person to talk with, you'll create solutions. They won't find them for you, but you will find different solutions to the things you're wrestling with. You've already found some solutions. You may well need help finding a better solution. And the other is something we said back, that sometimes we do things that seem irrational to us, but that's because we don't understand our own rationale. That's just part of being human, and not everything that motivates us is conscious. So don't isolate yourself. Make a relationship and share with someone else. It helps one grow and develop throughout one's life.
I love it. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you being here, man. Thanks for coming to hang out with me.
Oh, listen, thank you. It's been really fun. I've enjoyed our conversation. I hope your listeners do too.
I've enjoyed it too, man. I had a great time. You're welcome to come back anytime you want and hang out with us. I had a great time. If you end up publishing another book in the next couple of years, hey, listen, hit me up. I'm definitely down. I'd love to have you come back and hang out with us.
I'll let you know. I'm thinking of writing another one. As I said, I haven't retired my mind. I'm just not doing clinical work anymore.
That sounds awesome. With that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. You guys know where to find me at Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify all the way down to Pandora Radio. And as always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety signing out saying, don't ask how your day is today. Say, hey, how's your mental health?